Welcome to our introduction to the Eco Museum of Scottish Mining Landscapes. This is a recording of the very first webinar that the Eco Museum held back in January 2026, which is designed to let folk like you know who we are, what we do, and why we do it, and how you can get involved. So please feel free to share this video as far and wide as you want, the more the merrier. But before Aileen and I introduce you to the museum, we need to introduce ourselves. So I'm Catherine. I'm a senior lecturer in environmental history at the University of Stirling, with a particular interest in derelict land, its creation, its management, and more recently, its social and cultural value. I'm the project lead and the founder of the museum, and this is my official lottery photograph back in 2024.
And I'm Aileen. I'm the Community Engagement Officer for the Eco Museum's Breaking Barriers project. I've been involved in the Eco Museum since its launch in April 2024. And this is me in the summer, late summer of 2025, at a community event in Colburn. So without further ado, off we go.
So I'm going to cover the origins of the project and the underpinning research. So its backstory. Aileen will talk about eco museums in general and then specifically mining landscapes. I'll showcase the museum's collections. So I'll look at one of the landscape journeys, which are key to eco museums. And I'm going to look at the full shebang walk and then a number of blogs, both destination and topical. Then Aileen will cover where we are up to today. And we'll both finish off by exploring how you can get involved. The project owes its origins to a community arts initiative run by the Matt Roberts Centre up at Stirling University. And this consisted of a contemporary dance performance, Coal, choreographed by Gary Clark, an art exhibition based around the writings of D.H. Lawrence by folklore artist Philip Gurray. There were also art and drama workshops, community film screenings in two local mining communities, Fife in Stirlingshire and kind of Fishcross and Socket combined in Clackmannanshire. Now, a colleague, Alistair Ross, and I were approached by the Matt Roberts and asked if we'd like to contribute. We were given a really minimal brief: provide their project with a legacy, engage the two mining communities, and reveal a hidden history. And to cut a very, very long story short, sadly, Alistair died suddenly and he never saw the project come to fruition. But the end result was two walks on a free-to-download mobile phone app, which some of you might be familiar with. The walks were created by the two communities, Fife and Socket, and they told the story of their local coal mining through the surviving landscape legacies. This was from the extant buildings to the barely visible, the humps, the bumps and hollows, the broken fences, the patches of scrubby vegetation interspersed with hard-standing building rubble, often fly-tipped and polluted with a vibrant orange of acid mine drainage. The communities used a mix of historic images, maps, sounds, film, oral testimonies, artwork, poetry and song, and they made the intangible tangible, or the invisible visible. And after a slow burn start, it proved extremely popular. And what was essentially a small self-contained project of just two routes, it snowballed as communities and individuals came forward to create their own routes and expanded the focus to include industries associated with coal, such as brick, lime workings, the social environment, housing, leisure, and the rail infrastructure. Communities took ownership of the project, and my role became one of editor cum facilitator. And by the time the Coal app, as it was known, came to the end of its functioning life, back in early 2023, there were around 25 routes, 180 odd miles of walking end to end, 1,000 plus images, and around 200,000 words of text. It was a massive community created and owned database that had no home, was no longer publicly accessible, and was at risk of being lost. And this was my first problem. Working so closely with the mining communities offered the opportunity to undertake a small self-contained research project. I was curious as to why the coal app proved so popular. And along with a sociology colleague, Ian McIntosh, who's subsequently retired, we explored public engagement with and understanding of these former mining landscapes. We also looked at the insider and outsider perceptions of pit villages. On the positive, the research suggested that former colliery sites, despite their marginality, their dereliction and sometimes traumatic associations, they provided a sense of historical and community continuity, an anchor point for identity, and links to the past that helped understand the present. So this gave me my answer as to the popularity of the coal app, this strong place-based social and cultural value. But the research also exposed a series of interrelated threats. So my next set of problems. The sites are generally not protected, and the land is often classified as vacant and derelict. And 2020 also saw the Scottish Government allocate £50 million to tackle the problem, and this is resulting in rapid redevelopment. There's no comprehensive record of the history of local sites from closure of the pit to present day. The recent landscape history has not been studied. There is also the demographic shifts from mining communities to dormitory villages with the decline of the industry. And this is bringing a concomitant loss of local knowledge and memory. Perceptions of former pit villages from the outsider looking in are often negative. They're associated with the legacies of deindustrialisation, so deprivation, low educational attainment, high incidence of drug and alcohol abuse. Coal industry has always had a poor reputation with its militant labour force, a high incidence of occupational injury and disease, environmental degradation, and significantly climate change. And set against a current backdrop of zero carbon, associations with coal now carry notions of guilt and shame in the public consciousness. And the voices of former colliery communities are falling silent, or perhaps more accurately, being silenced. The old coal app had also allowed me to capture feedback and analytics. It had been downloaded around about 5,000 times across the globe over its lifespan, which was around 4 years. And while there was a good gender balance among app users, we didn't engage the 18 to 25-year-olds particularly well. Neither did we wholly reach people who were not connected to the industry by location, occupation, or family. And all of this underpins the creation of the new Eco Museum.
And here it is, the Eco Museum of Scottish Mining Landscapes. Thanks to the determination of Catherine, and with heartfelt thanks to the National Lottery Heritage Fund, who provided the money, the Eco Museum of Scottish Mining Landscapes was launched in April 2024. Designed to keep the best of the coal app, but also to find a safe and sustainable, a long-term sustainable home for all of the coal app data. Little hint for you, apps need constant updating to keep up to date with operating systems. You know, these really pesky system updates your phone keeps forcing on you. So if you decide to build your own eco museum, our advice, keep to a website. To widen the geographical area from the original coal app base, 5 new target areas were identified. We were going to be including new content telling the story of coal into the future through ecology, geology, and the black to green energy transitions. And this meant embracing a whole new suite of icons, including, even selfie spots. All of which would bring the history of post-industrial landscapes alive, whilst charting the ongoing changes to these landscapes and promoting their importance to a new greener economy and highlighting their part in fighting climate change. This we hoped would reach folk not connected to coal, as Catherine said, through occupation, location and family, the typical coal app user, and hopefully, again, fingers crossed, would engage a younger age group. But it's not just Catherine and myself who are involved in the Eco Museum. The Eco-Museum of Scottish Mining Landscape is a partnership between the University of Stirling, the National Mining Museum of Scotland, the Digital Humanities Institute at Sheffield University, the Botanical Society of Britain and Ireland, the Scottish Geology Trust, and community artist Yvonne Wayand-Lyle. For our new Breaking Barrier initiative, we've also been joined by Town Break Dementia Support and the Hunterian Museum in Glasgow, largely because our project geologist got herself a new job as curator of minerals and petrology. So you can see there, we've got just left to right there, we've got Alex, one of our student volunteers, then Yvonne, our artist, Rose, another of our student volunteers, Matt is the one with the green jacket right in the middle, with me next to him. Katie, our rock goddess, project geologist, is standing next, and you'll recognise Catherine on the right-hand side. So on the 24th of April, over 100 people from right across Scotland came to our launch event, and over a wee cup of tea and some incredibly delectable cream cakes, over 100 people all asked the same question: what is an eco-museum? Now, if I could get a quid for every time I've been asked this question, we would never have to go cap in hand to the lottery or any other funder again. We all know what a traditional museum is. It's a building with stuff, the collection, looked after by experts, the curators, who choose what we, the public, get to see. They also have large electricity bills. And most of the stuff is actually in storage, so only a small percentage is out on display, and the curators have decided what's going to be out on display, and then they've written all the labels and all the information about what's on display. An eco-museum, initially defined by a French bloke, Riviere, in the 1970s, is completely different, or can be completely different. Typically, it spans a place or territory. It doesn't necessarily need a building. We don't have a building, we're virtual. And more importantly, the content is curated by the community for everyone. Catherine and I are not curators. We are facilitators. We have no building, only virtual shelves. Now, sometimes the prefix eco can be a tad problematic when we're explaining what the eco-museum is. I can assure you, Catherine and I have never taken tomato soup in a flask into an art gallery. Think of eco as a prefix in terms of the general definition of ecology, which appears on the slide, the relationship of living people, of living things to a place. And before we take a closer look at the Eco-Museum of Scottish Mining Landscapes, I'm going to quickly detour us into a potted history of eco-museums themselves. So firstly, I've got to say there is continued real-world and academic debate about what eco-museums are. Eco-museums can also sometimes be seen as a tad rogue, disliked by the establishment because they challenge the traditional heritage discourse and contest the role of the expert curator. Because of this, they can also be the darlings of the critical heritage and heritage futures movement. Eco-museums are not a new concept. As I said just in the previous slide, the concept has been around since the 1970s. Remember Riviere, the French bloke? He was a French museologist who believed that museums should reflect the local culture and distinctiveness of place. So if anybody here has been to the British Museum, you'll know that there's not that much British in the British Museum. In the 1980s, Riviere, in his introduction to a UNESCO journal, likened an eco-museum to a mirror, by which the local population views itself to discover its own image, in which it seeks an explanation of the territory to which it is attached and of the populations that have preceded it, that the local population holds up to its visitors so that it may be better understood. Now, we use Riviere's mirror analogy a lot, and I will return back to it in a wee while. There are now around 300 eco-museums across the globe. Predictably, most of them are located in Europe. There's also a cluster in the French-speaking areas of Canada. But there's just 7 in the UK. 5, including us, are in Scotland. And one of our 5 is cross-border. And there's 2 in Wales. Interestingly, none in England yet. Some of eco-museums are like us. They're virtual, and some have buildings. Now, as I mentioned, there is ongoing debate about what an eco-museum is, and there is no right or wrong definition. In the 1990s, attempts were made to codify, to identify core attributes of eco-museums. So there were 3 main ones: identification of a geographic territory, an emphasis on community empowerment, and the provision of community benefits, whether these are tangible, intangible, and or economic. In 2004, this definition was simplified at the Ecomuseum Longnet workshop held in Trento, Italy, as defined on the slide. An ecomuseum is a dynamic way in which communities preserve, interpret and manage their heritage for sustainable development. An ecomuseum is based on community agreement. Now, going back to the Ecomuseum of Scottish Mining Landscapes, I can demonstrate our approach using the mirror analogy. Think of the Ecomuseum as a digital platform. Now think of it as a mirror, one that's sitting over there on the ground to your left, or perhaps locked away in a cupboard under the stairs. Now imagine Catherine and I as facilitators showing you where the mirror is, picking it up and then angling it so that we can make sure that you, as community curators, can see yourselves at your very best. Showing you how you can use a mirror, how you can hold it up to your visitors. And once you're used to posing, angling the mirror, using it to reflect what you want reflected, you won't need Catherine and I to hold it anymore. The mirror now belongs to you. You are in control. So enough of academic history and mirror analogies. What is in the Ecomuseum of Scottish Mining Landscapes? So remember the territorial place-based element of ecomuseums that we've been discussing in the last few screens. Well, our territory spans the Scottish Midland Basin coalfield, reaching from Ayrshire to Fife, as pictured in this wonderful 1950s map. I think it's a 1950s map that Catherine got, the National Mining Museum. The front door, if we use a building analogy, so the front door to our ecomuseum is our homepage, which has been visited over 110,000 times since we launched in April 2024. And it has links into our very active social media presence, which Catherine will talk about later. You can find out who we are and our project collaborators are by visiting our project page. And that project page also has a written description of everything that Catherine spoke about earlier in this actual video in terms of where we are and where we came from. And we've also got in the contact, there's numerous, 4 ways of getting in touch with us. In the contact us, let's start a conversation page. And now on to our virtual shelves. I'm going to hand over to Catherine for this part, so back over to you, Catherine.
So the landscape journeys and blogs are key to our collections, and I'm just going to briefly talk you through kind of how it all works. So the landscape journeys work across all platforms, your PC, your laptop, a tablet, and a mobile phone. And now you can download a dynamic hard copy too. And they're a mix of walking and cycling routes, and more recently, what you can actually see out of the train window. So from the home screen, you scroll down and tap the overview map. We've got round about 45 plus routes live and 30 coming soon. And this will bring you up a pop-up box that tells you how it all works, along with the icon legend. So you scroll down, and once you hit close, you will get the live overview map, and you just simply choose your walk by location. You just tap the icon. I'm just briefly going to look at the Forty Bing. This was created by the Stonyburn and Bents Future Visions group and Sophia, one of our student volunteers. It's a 2-mile or 3.2 kilometre circular walk, totally on the level and fully accessible, and it's designed to be intergenerational. It tells the story of the Fulshie colliery through the medium of the landscape for parents and grandparents to share, whilst incorporating a children's rock trail or treasure hunt based on the mining history and the wildflower ecology of the Bing. You just simply hit view route, tap the start icon, and off you go. The programme will live track you around the route, but there are also written directions. This next slide gives you an indication of the contents, as well as text. There are historic images and maps, sketches, and we also have sound. So that's an example of a landscape journey. But what if there's no visible cycling or walking route? A group or an individual has a story that they want to share, or a building that's important to their heritage. Well, they can create what has become known as a destination blog, highlighted on the overview location map by the bookmark icon. So I've highlighted 4 destination blogs on the slide, and I'm briefly going to talk about the legacy of Sonyburn and Bents, their blog, because it tells the story of increasing community involvement. So the Future Visions group, they were the first to contact me when the project went live. They already had their own route around the village with an associated booklet and interpretation boards, but they wanted to be included in the project. So together with Sophia, they compiled a blog telling the story of their local mining heritage. A bit later on down the line, they then decided they might quite like a walking route around the Bing that could be intergenerational, but also linked into their village walk and also across to the neighbouring settlement of East Whitburn. They have a crafting group that replaces the painted rock trail stones, and this year we're going to host a Coalscape event in the village, but more on that in a minute. 30% of the visitors through our doors, our virtual doors, are from overseas. And again, this is reflected in the topical blog example, showcasing an interesting collaboration at the Britannia Mine Museum in Vancouver, in British Columbia. So this is examples of our collections. The project that formally established the Eco Museum, so phase 1, came to an end early in April 2025 with a co-created art exhibition inspired by 5 Coalscape events that ran over the summer. And these were designed to extend our reach both to a younger audience and beyond traditional connections to coal. And they focused on ecology and geology, the role former colliery sites can play in the black to green energy transitions, and they culminated in a cyanotype print workshop. And the picture, bottom right, was one of our highlights of 2025. This was horsetail growing on a former colliery site and fossilised horsetail in coal, so 330 million years apart, but both found in the same location.
As Catherine just mentioned, April 2025 marked the end of the Eco Museum's first year and the end of our initial lottery funding. The project team, our collaborators and our community curators all had the same question: what's next? Now, the good news was that community engagement had been beyond our wildest expectations and went way beyond our project capacity. We'd celebrated and shared local heritage with wider audiences. Over 30%, as Catherine mentioned, of our web traffic is from folk out with the UK, an internationally diverse community of armchair walkers. We'd produced tangible outcomes that had and could springboard local projects and activities. Many of our self-guided landscape journeys were and are being used as routes for community-guided walks, promoting regenerative tourism and locally based health and wellness initiatives. You can see the Greener Kirkcaldy, they were one of the first, weren't they, Catherine?
Yeah.
You can see their advert using the Cardenden route for health and wellbeing walks. We'd also showcased the feral ecology of the Bing and opencast. We discovered a new species of plant on an opencast site. It's called the Sweet Corn Story, and I will tell anybody about it if you want to email me. And we also spotted a plant on an unnamed Bing, which hadn't been seen in the area since the 1950s. We'd gained a greater understanding of what is under our feet through geology, so much so that we're leading on the multi-agency interpretation of one of Scotland's foremost geological sites, Sparslack. We'd also looked forward, focusing on the black to green energy transition with blogs on geothermal energy and helping to connect communities with third sector organisations to explore wind farm community benefit funding. At a recent meeting in South Lanarkshire, I had the absolute pleasure of attending a multi-agency wind farm funded strategy session looking at how we could use and turn local eco-museum content into a local heritage trail with a series of interpretation boards. So that was very much the good news. But, and there's always a but, there was far more that we could do. This is a landscapes map which featured on the Eco Museum on the last day of April 2025. So you can see that we've moved away from the initial Coalscape area. Spoiler alert, it's already changed. So each of these black icons shows the location of a landscape journey or a destination block. The white icons show the locations of coming soon landscape journeys, those which are in active production by community curators. So yeah, we did well. We did expand our territory, but we had literally just scratched the surface. We'd basically ran out of time. During the first year of the project, we'd identified some key issues which we'd been discussing with our fabulous lottery account manager, Samina. To surmise, we realised we needed to expand our geographical reach even more, responding to community demand, and turn the whole map black with icons. There was a definite desire from our existing community curators for us to host more events and investigate new networking opportunities between different areas. Digital confidence and isolation were also being identified very much a barrier to having more community curators getting involved. The desire was there, but the tech was putting them off. Physical and cognitive impairment also meant that the traditional route mapping methodology wasn't working with those who physically couldn't get out into the landscapes themselves. And we knew from our Google Analytics that we had a huge and diverse set of armchair walkers. Perhaps we could reach these more people somehow? And despite our best efforts, we knew we were still not getting the intergenerational reach that we wanted. And this would become even more of an issue in the future, neatly described as the 3-die rule. Thanks, Ian, for that. So where I come from, your maternal grandfather is your die. And whilst your die is still in your life, you have a familiar tie to their lifetime. But once they've gone, the links and ties become weaker, eventually completely breaking. Stories disappear into the mists of time. And coupled that with one of the most heard clarion calls from our community curators was, how can we get kids involved? We also had an increasing issue recruiting student volunteers. Due to the cost of living crisis, they're far too busy working to volunteer, and this was having a serious impact on project capacity. Would be, if we could offer students maybe paid employment, would that help? And then the thorniest issue of them all, sustainability. Without a project team on board, would the rapid dynamic expansion of the Eco Museum come shuddering to a halt? How could we legacy plan? Could we somehow produce maybe how-to training packs, some kind of toolkit, something which would replace the project team when the funding dried up? Cue drum roll. In April 2025, we applied for and were successful in getting funding. Thanks again to all you lottery players out there, and we were successful in getting the funding for our 2-year project, Breaking Barriers. And as you can see on the screen, basically our deliverables were 30 community-created landscape journeys, stronger focus, accessibility, reminiscence, active travel, a digital wizard, 3 toolkits, independent route creation, elderly dementia, schools, families, 12 Coalscape events, 12 attendance at gala and open days, and really importantly, recruit community ambassadors. And Catherine and I are going to talk about all of these in a little bit more. So I'm going to hand back to Catherine to show us how we can get involved.
That's the first and easiest way to see what we get up to. Come along to a Coalscapes event. So as Aileen said, we are running around 6 of these family-friendly activities across the summer at a variety of locations. And these are aimed at expanding our audience reach. But you can come along and you can rediscover former extractive landscapes from new perspectives. You can look through a geological, ecological and placemaking art lens. So they're led by Katie Strang from the Hunterian, Matt Harding from the Botanical Society of Britain and Ireland, and our project artist Yvonne Wayan-Lyle. They're very informal, they're free, they last around about 3 hours, and generally we can cater for all levels of mobility. They will be advertised on our social media, and for those of you that avoid, also via the news section of the museum website, or simply just email us and ask. We'll have firm dates and locations probably round about early March. Also pop along and see us at gala days, bring the kids and the grandkids. We man the stands, we've got colouring sheets, stickers, dressing up and handling boxes. Gala days, aside from being good fun, it's a really good way to maintain connection with the mining communities, and it's also a good opportunity for marketing who we are and what we do.
As you'll no doubt have gathered, community curators, folk like you, plan, design and decide on the content for all the landscape journeys. So you could get involved by becoming a community curator. So you can do this in a group, individually, as a collaboration between two groups, maybe a walking group and a heritage group working together. You might want to feature an existing trail. You can see the photo on the left-hand side of the screen of the Bonarty trails. I spent a wonderful day quite recently with Bonarty Heritage Preservation Group, deciding on and planning on the transfer and the additional content of incorporating these into the Eco Museum. You can see a number of photos on the slide where we're out in the field, route mapping with community curators, helping to kickstart the process with them. So what you can see there is above the Bonarty slide, you can see us out with John Paul in Summerlee for the 2 Summerlee routes, which are going to be published soon. You can see us next to it. You'll see me with Craig and Robert. This is Muirkirk 3. We're out route planning. This was before the heavens opened and we got absolutely soaked. On the right-hand side, this is actually in Alva. And this is us route planning the route that's going to be coming soon about the silver mine. On the bottom right, we're in Gore Bridge. That was the first time I used an iPad for route mapping. And let's not forget as well all the dog walkers out there. So this is a wonderful picture of Princess Leia. So how many dog walkers out there regularly walk along old railway paths? Could that be potentially a new community curated route? Tell us a bit about Princess Leia, actually.
Yeah, well, Princess Leia was our first project mascot. Bless her. She's passed over the Rainbow Bridge now. But she'd been out with a community. I think she was Devonside, the very first route. She'd stung her paws on nettles and categorically refused to walk, so she had to be carried. Bless her.
And the great thing about Princess Leia is that Princess Leia is her memory and her, she's actually she's in photos and walks. She's in the landscape journeys, so she's been there and forevermore. So yeah, great for you dog walkers out there. Or if you're not physically able or don't want to go out into the field, I must admit that one in Muirkirk, the one I'm talking about with Craig with the orange jacket, we got so soaked that day that I'm actually quite into going into cafes now and planning. Because you can plan your route and design it from the comfort of a local community or cafe. So some of our community curators have not even walked their landscape. Physical ability is never a barrier. So if we look at the screen here, you can see the very first time that we tabletop mapping. If you look for the Tunnocks tea cakes, that's me with Sam, Requiem from Glenbuck. Then we've got me with George planning the Seafield route.
Yeah.
It was Morrison's Cafe, wasn't it?
It was in Kirkcaldy.
Yeah, Morrison's Cafe. And then there's something about Fife, because the one at the bottom, we're in the wonderful Tony's Cafe in Cardenden. And what I love about this picture is there's 4 of us there, and we've got some people using maps and paper, some using iPads, all over some delicious Turkish coffee in there. And then on the left-hand side, I must talk about Margaret from Crossford. And that's Margaret and I at the National Mining Museum of Scotland's archive. And we're looking through some archival maps.
The National Coal Board's disused shaft maps. Wonderful.
Yeah, great resource. So we're going through there as we're planning the route. We actually planned 2 routes that day. And Margaret had a great method. So Margaret had got her husband. Margaret, as you can see, is not very mobile, God love her. But Margaret got her husband to go out and record it on his phone so that she could do the directions and plan the route. So yeah, it doesn't matter how you want to do it, but if you want to become a community curator, you will plan and design and find all the content for your route. Or, actually, before we go on to the next way to get involved, can I quickly show you the map where it is now? So if you want to, as a community curator, get your local landscape journey on the map, just get in touch with us and we'll get it kick-started. And as you can see now, I did say there was a spoiler alert before, you can see what the map looks like. And this is a map from the end of January. So you can see the cluster of white coming soon icons for the Bonarty routes that I mentioned. So again, after this video, go into the Eco Museum, check out how many landscape journeys are now featured, because it will have changed. Anyway, back to the other ways you can get involved. Perhaps you would like to
write a blog. So if you've got a story you want to tell us about a building that you want to celebrate, again, give us a shout. There are no hard, fast rules in terms of its length. It can be 50 words with lots of images, 500 or 5,000 words split into several parts. And likewise, in terms of content, it can be destination or it can be topical, as long as it fits under that broad umbrella of the extractive industries. On the slide, there is a selection of blogs and topics ranging from buildings and stories to events, ecology reports, and both Aileen and student volunteers have written about their experiences working for the project. Likewise, if you have mining related news that you want to share, we can add this to our What's News section.
And here, this is a great one, isn't it? Because this is the Fife
Miners Memorial Way.
So definitely check out our news section, particularly if you're in Fife, and have a wee look at that, because it's another way to get involved.
Or you can just simply follow us on social media, and I've put all our links up, but you can access our social media from the homepage.
Can I also say as well that quite a lot of people just don't want to be using social media. So every 3 months or so, there is a Coal Vaults news item, which basically puts together all the highlights from social media from the preceding 3 months. So if you don't want to use Facebook or X or Blue Sky, you don't have to. Now, another way to get involved and is to become a community ambassador, and almost all of our community curators from the first year of the project have now become community ambassadors. Fueled by a plentiful supply of tunnocks, community ambassadors are key to the long-term sustainability of the Eco-Museum. They are instrumental in helping steer the project team, shaping the toolkits and coming up with innovative new ways of using landscapes and blogs and delivering them in their own local areas. We regularly meet up either in person or online. We've got a bit of budget for travel expenses. Workshops with our project partners. These ambassador events are also a brilliant way for folk from different areas to meet up and share ideas. So as an example, you can see the very sexy interpretation boards on the photo at the top left of this screen. This is the fabulous Save the Cage project in Fife. And I love it when I see that the local folk who organise this sharing their expertise with other folk in Ayrshire and South Lanarkshire. The photo on the bottom right shows Matt, our project ecologist, being recorded by Robert, one of our ambassadors, with Ruth, Donald and Peter, 3 others, looking on. And all 4 recently were back office trained on the admin interface of the Eco Museum and are now able to upload their landscape journeys without having to wait on either the project team or student volunteers to do it. All of the ambassadors who have been back office trained will be key in testing the new admin wizard. The beta version is ready now, so the ambassadors are going to get involved in that. And then it will be rolled out to other ambassadors who will get to play about with it for a year before it's then rolled out to the general public via the Eco Museum. We've got some community ambassadors who are specifically interested in working with local schools and youth groups, and some who are specifically interested in developing the Reminiscence and Dementia Toolkit. If you'd be interested in finding out more about the Ambassador Programme, then just let me know. Get in touch using the Contact Us section of the Eco Museum. In the next 6 months, we've got ambassador events right across Scotland, places like Summerlee, the National Mining Museum, at the university buildings themselves in Stirling, down in the Boswell Centre in Auckland, at the Miners Institute in Coburn, and lots of other places.
So thanks for watching our wee video. We hope that you have a far better understanding of who we are, what we do, why we do it, and how you can get involved. If you haven't already visited, just scan the QR code and follow the link. We hope you enjoy the community curated content and that you decide to join the increasing band of community curators, bloggers and ambassadors who will all make sure that the Eco Museum shelves are full of local stories and guided routes grounded in the post-industrial landscapes that we all know and love.